Our New Testament lesson is Matthew 2, 1 through 12. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the word of the Lord. And I could not help but remember a situation I had a long time ago that taught me about the rising star of the King of the Jews. I was brand new in ministry, wet behind the ears, and had a lot to learn. Early on, I went and had a meeting with the women's organization in the congregation, and in those days, the women's organization was strong and vital. And this was a get-to-know-you kind of meeting. And in my naivete, I asked them if they would mind giving a little portion of the money they had been earning for something for some refugees. I thought it was a good idea because there was a real urgent need in another part of the world. And right away when I did that, one of the women sort of latched onto that and made a motion. And then they voted on it right away, and everybody voted yes. And I was pretty happy. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Well, look what I did. And then the next morning, I got a phone call from the chair of the women's organization informing me that the women were really upset. Upset? What about? Well, they thought that I had conspired with this one woman to get that vote, to get that money. And for some reason, that was a negative thing. So now there was all this gossip going around and conspiracy theories flying. And when I hung up the phone, I just wondered what in the wide world I had gotten myself into. Now, I can tell you, I never would have thought to see that as the star at its rising, but it was. It sent me on a journey, because it was then that I had to start learning about some things that no schooling ever could have taught me. For one thing, I had to learn more about the timing of when you do things. I needed to build some relationships before I started asking people for money. Especially money they'd been hard at work earning for a purpose. So that was a real lesson to learn. And then I learned about gossip. So out of this, I started worrying about what people were thinking about me. And then I had to start, in that relation, I had to start learning what it means to be a public figure. You know, here I had to put, every week, stand up here and put myself on the line, and you know, everybody knew me, and for a while there, I was just worried about what people were saying about me, and that made me very uncomfortable, until one day I suddenly realized, hey, it's Tuesday. People are at work, they're making breakfast, they're getting kids ready for school, they're not thinking about me at all. And that was a great relief, to tell you the truth. So that made me feel a lot better. Then I learned some more things about gossip. I learned that, you know, two people can be in a room, and one person is a gossip, and that person can tell another person something about someone who's not in the room, and they can make that person feel like dozens and dozens of people are abuzz about this issue, this thing that's been told about this other person who's not in the room. And they really can. It's very manipulative. In reality, nobody even knows about it or cares, because a lot of people are more mature. And so I learned I had to think through how to deal with that. And so what I ended up doing was thinking, you know, I don't have to be curious if anybody ever tells me people are saying. That's the biggie. People are saying. I stop them right there. I have for many years. And if they won't tell me who's saying, I won't participate in the conversation. And that's worked pretty well. And then I learned that in family therapy, family systems thinking, that now has, of course, been here for a long time, then it's still actually fairly new. They have something called triangling, and people have been applying family systems to churches for years, and so in triangling, it's just like gossip. Here's one person who wants to tell somebody over here something, maybe the pastor, maybe here's a church member and here's a pastor. But instead of going to the pastor and speaking directly and rationally, they'll triangle in a third person. And that third person, all right, you go tell the pastor this stuff, but don't tell the pastor who said it. Now they'll make out like, oh, I'm too shy to go talk to the pastor directly. Well, I haven't bought into that for many years. That's just manipulation, and all it does is leave the pastor with a lot of anxiety about what's going on. I think old-timey personnel committees used to play that role of the being triangled. You know, somebody gets a burr in their sack. And then they go to the personnel committee, and then the personnel committee goes to the pastor, but the pastor never knows who's upset. So, you know, I quit playing that game decades ago, as everyone should, you know. So, anyway, the thing is, that event, which was pretty darn painful for me in the beginning of my ministry, was where the star was rising. Star of the King of the Jews, being born in my life more, and sent me on a journey to find the Lord more closely and deeply and wisely, because I had to go on that journey of learning how to be a minister, how you cope with things. That lasted, you know, it took a while, it took a lot of thinking through things, and it, you know, it was essential, and it has served me well. So I never would have dreamed of saying, oh, I see the star rising in that. But now, years later, I can look back and I can say, boy, there's the star rising. Oh, there's the star rising. And it leads me to ask you, where can you look back in your life now and see the star rising that maybe you never would have seen years ago? Or maybe even months ago, or maybe even yesterday. The star is rising, and sometimes we don't see it because we're not looking in the right place. It's not always a happy place where the star rises. But God wants to take us on a journey and bring us to the Lord. And so be aware. Be aware. Look for that star and think about things and see where you're growing and what you're doing. And how is that taking you closer to Bethlehem? The star is always rising, but it just may not be popping up where you think to look. Even for the wise men. Here they ended up talking to the king dangerously, but then God used that to send them further on their journey. Instead of arresting them, he asked the wise leaders, where's the king of the Jews supposed to be born? And so they look in the scriptures and find Micah, I think chapter 5, verse 2. Why? It's supposed to be in Bethlehem. And so even Herod does the bidding of God, sending them on to Bethlehem, where they are able to worship the newborn king. And then the star keeps on rising as they figure out through a dream. Don't go home that way. Go by a different road. Because, see, they were thinking. They were courageous. They were figuring things out. And God's star kept leading them, so they went home by a safe way. And so as we start this new year, don't think of the star rising as something that happened once long ago, but think of it rising where you live and where you work, even today.